I didn't plug back your computer. You can, Hi everybody, this is Marcus Toe, currently the artist for Excalibur on the Dawn of X series on the X-Men. Welcome to my live draw. Today I'm going to be drawing Cyclops, one of my favorite characters in X-Men. Let's go. So usually when I start drawing things, they start off quite rough, like a lot of random shapes and rough lines, and they're usually just to get the idea across in my head so I can visualize it a little bit easier, and then each stage gets a little bit tighter. The good thing about digital is that if I'm not happy with the position of things, it's easy enough to transform and move them around as needed. So right now I'm using a pretty standard brush for Clip Studio. So that's the program I'm using. So I'm using just a pretty standard G pen. I use it for everything. It's a very versatile tool. I like using it because it's just something. I'm not a fan of switching tools, and mixed media is stuff that I really like seeing, but I'm not particularly good at. I like to, stay in the flow of work by using one tool, and this brush really helps. It's standard for the program, so that's pretty awesome. I and as I'm drawing Cyclops, I I typically go with the '90s Jim Lee version. I'm a big fan of the skull cap as well. I think he's got some of the best costumes all around. But the '90s costume is probably the thing I like, the one I like the most. And as I'm drawing and setting up the roughs for the finished lines, one of the things I like to try to do is, set up a lot of the heavier lines. It helps with to know anatomy by knowing what will basically cast shadows, what part of the body will give you those bold lines that you want to make the image pop. But really the roughs are more for trying to get the right pose to try to make it smooth and lifelike. I think the silhouette's really important as well. A lot of times I draw hands like this. I start with the silhouette of a hand, and then I add fingers and thumbs afterwards. Though every once in a while I cheat and I just don't draw them. Or I draw them from memory and just go with it. But I like to try to use a good silhouette to start off an idea, as long as it does the job and gives me the look I want. Yeah, I guess this hand's causing me a little bit more problems than I thought. As drawings tend to, there are things that you think will go fast, but when you actually arrive at that part of it, it just doesn't seem to go right or look right. And when all else fails, a fist. So another thing I like about digital is that it allows me to kind of play around with certain things like lighting, rendering. It allows you to do a lighting path sometimes on work, and I like to just use a pretty standard watercolor brush just to lay down a couple of just to give a little more form to it. Helps with later down the line with rendering, giving a little bit more to your work. Sometimes trying to transform different parts of the body and the drawing as you're drawing looks like you're Frankensteining the whole thing. It's one of those kind of things that you realize as you draw more, is that sometimes you just have to find a way to achieve the look you're going for, and there's no real rules to any of this. You don't have to it's just whatever works for you. So right now what I did was I put all my rough layers into a folder so I can kind of make it a bit transparent, almost like a blue line. If you know how to do it traditionally, what you would typically do is light box it. So on the inking layer. So right now I'm basically doing what we would do is light box and start the inking layer, as this would be my rough / pencil layer. And sometimes I like to start with bold, easy surrounding lines of a figure. Some people like to start with the face. I find that sometimes I'm too stiff to start on something that sometimes needs to be so delicate. So I like to use some of the lines that I laid down before to start getting myself into what I want to see with the inks. With the inks, a lot of it is like I said before, it's lighting. You want the lighter lines to be where the light source is facing, and the darker lines typically would be where there is less light. So you can play with shadows. You can play with shadows with just the line weights if you're uncomfortable with placing actual blacks on your figure. So I spent a lot of years drawing traditionally. A lot of my pages were traditional for a long time, and I found that digital helped me, after a lot of years of doing things traditionally, just to do things, faster, but also it allows me to try things out that I normally wouldn't. And one of the things that I think benefited me, or that came out of working from traditional to digital, as I became more confident in laying down blacks on my figures. At one point I was very open because I was too scared to really put any dark shapes onto my figure in fear that I might mess up. I think that we all learn in a different way, and you just have to kind of find yourself and how you normally learn best, and then lean into it. And I think it was important for me for sure to learn everything traditionally. But this helped me make that next step. The bad thing about doing things digitally is that you really don't have any original art. I mean, the drawings are still there, you know, in digital format, but sometimes not having the physical copy in your hands and to show is something that I think deters people away from it. And that's totally understandable as well. Inking really didn't come very natural to me, to be honest with you. A lot of times I ink like I pencil, which is not necessarily a good thing. And, you don't necessarily get the look and the lines out of the tools that you want. One thing that helped me, again, with digital is that I got to still keep my penciling technique with this G Pen without the mess and the hassle and the stress of it not looking the way I want it to. So it's possible that I'm not using the tools correctly still. But a lot of times it's the outcome that you want that matters more than anything. But everything's a learning process. I'd like to get back to more traditional drawing with pen and paper again. Cool thing too about digital, if you want to know, they have some pretty neat things to make things easier, like circle templates, instant circles. You don't have to fudge around too much with the rulers in real life. I'm also hitting undo a lot, if you see like that. Sometimes it's just not the line I want. That's why I have a hotkey to help with the undo button, and my left hand at the ready with the undo. What really helped me make the plunge into trying new things like digital, like inking, like a lot of tools and different techniques that I wasn't used to was joining a studio. I'm a part of Raid Studios here in Toronto, and we do a lot of things. But one of the best things about it is the community aspect of it. I feel that I wouldn't have went digital. I wouldn't have even started inking myself without encouragement and seeing how other people do it. You find community wherever you can, and find inspiration wherever you can. And one of the great things about being around other artists is that you learn things from them, and you see that they do it they can do it, and so why couldn't you? And having the right people around you to encourage you to work on your craft and do things that you didn't think that you could. I think that's important as well as an artist. Generally, I'm going a little bit faster than I normally would. I like to lollygag a little bit more than I do here. You only have so much time, right? Also, this is the first drawing of the day for me. In fact, probably the first drawing of the week. It's a little more stiff than I would like. A lot of people ask me advice on how to draw and how to get into comics and all these things, and it's those are always hard questions to answer because everyone has their own way and everyone has their own time, the way they learn, the things that you have access to, but in the end of the day, you just gotta draw. You gotta draw everything you see. And even though I'm drawing, Cyclops, a superhero, right now, and I love drawing superheroes ever since I was a kid, you gotta learn how to draw everything. And I think that's what comics is great for. It as an artist, it forces you to draw so many things that you wouldn't really normally draw. Mixed with a lot of fantasy stuff that you can really have a hand at creating. It's a lot of fun. I love drawing. It's one of the things that I know that I can always do, and it always gives me a lot of joy to just sit down and draw something. It's always good. I mean, I guess you would have to love drawing as a comic book artist, really. I mean, a lot of times you're spending a lot of hours at the desk every day to get your monthly comics done and make sure your editors are happy and just to make sure that you can make a living too. So if you didn't like drawing, you'd have a very hard time sitting at your desk for so many hours. I think one of the best things too about the X-Men specifically is their powers. You get to really try to be creative to make their powers look cool on paper. You don't have the benefit of a special effects team. You have to imagine it in a 2D format to try to convey a sense of power and explosiveness, and the X-Men a lot of times make it a lot easier because their powers are so visual, and with the colors and everything, it really pops, and it makes it really fun to draw. I think that's why I picked an X-Men, and of course Cyclops is one of the ones. As a child, I always thought that it was so cool. He had those cool visors and the cool beams out of his head. Another good thing about digital is that you can fill in blacks instantly. It makes it a lot easier, that's for sure. And stuff like this I really enjoy showing people. The masks are always fun. So what I would do is I would select the outside of the figure with the selection wand, and I'd open a new layer, and then I would create a layer mask in your menu option. And that allows it, so if you start drawing on the layer again, one on the right is the masking layer, and then on the left is the drawing layer, you can draw on the sheet without drawing over your character. So if you would say want to fill in the background with black, but you don't want to mess around with the line art on the outside, you just fill it in. And it makes for some cool effects. So let's add some shadows on Cyclops, our old boy Cyc. And this is where the years of anatomy help. You get to carve out, as I like to say, a lot of the lights and darks of the figure. And I had already laid out a lot of the line work underneath, which I'm just following for the most part. A little rendering. Like how I do that line, erase. A little bit easy way to always make something your figure a little bit more dynamic is add a waist twist. There's a little more something to the pose. And of course, since this is a 90s era costume, I'm not drawing the legs or the feet. Just kidding, I don't have time for that right now. But maybe I'll do a whole tutorial on drawing feet, how about that? Would that make up for it? So we're really lucky nowadays. There's so many good reference, so much good reference out there. A lot of artists are really kind with their time, and they do tutorials, and they post a lot of good reference to help artists have basically have an easier time than they used to trying to find things that make to help learn how to just draw better. Everyone can learn. Every pro, every amateur, everyone can find something that they need to draw better or work on, and it's good to, the internet has a lot of good resources for you. also have a lot of hotkeys, but most of the hotkeys are strictly just rotate tool, which I use all the time, and undo tool. Also the tools to change the size of your brushes. Those are my hotkeys that I usually have on my tablets. And really, any tablet is good. You're just going to have to look around and look at reviews and see what fits your budget, but also, you know, what fits the things that you want to do yourself. I don't color much, so I need more precision with inking, and pen precision is probably most important for that. But I mean, you really can use any tablets to get what you want, to get the looks that you want. Some just might take a little doing. A lot of times I find the abs some of the hardest things to do, because sometimes they don't really make sense. They're kind of stretchy and they turn, and you have to make sure that the structure is still there to make sure that they look right. See how versatile this tool is? It's the standard G pen. You can see on the left, highlighted. Just a very versatile tool. It gives you a great line. Even add some texture to it to not make it seem too computerized. So we're getting to the point where you're pretty much done. You want to maybe add some extra detail to kind of just give it a little bit more something. What I like to do is a lot of times with single images like this, I really like utilizing bold shapes in the back. It helps make the drawing pop out a little bit more, so you you try to mix up your positives and negatives in your picture. So positive being white, negative being black, to push and pull your image. And sometimes you want to add a little bit of gray. And one neat thing about this program is that you can utilize a hatching tool, and just to give some texture to some of the elements on your drawing. So you get to play around with some of these things. You could do this by hand, but it would take a lot longer. And adding shapes like this really help your drawing pop. It's not much background, but sometimes all you need is an idea of something in the back. And you can, push his powers a little bit more, and then just draw into the black with a white or transparent. It's just playing. I find this part of it just messing around. It's the fun part. And if you ever want to change your masking layer, you can always use the any brush tool, and you just brush over it, so you can play around with what shows and what does not show. And you can always add a little color, which is nice. So I just open up a new layer, and I use the selection tool to select parts of the area that I want to add color to. I'll just use a standard red, and then voila. And you can play around with that too as a brush, with some, maybe a watercolor. It's a little too, it's okay. Just to pull the color in a little. Maybe a blue. I'm not great at coloring, but it's sometimes with digital you can just do something for a quick laugh and see if it works. So even adding a little color helps bump it up. course, a little bit of yellow, because you can't have Cyclops without a little bit of yellow. I don't normally color, so you guys get something a little special. Now, add a little brown to his hair, I guess. Might as well while we're here. A little bit of red, since there's a lot of red going on. All right, I think we're done. Let's just sign this drawing as I do, and see, I can't even get my signature right. So I'll just do this. All right, there we have it. Cyclops. I hope you guys enjoyed the stream. Hopefully we can do this again sometime. Maybe I'll draw another character for you guys. Maybe I'll take requests. I hope you have a good one. Everyone stay healthy and enjoy your Tuesday. Thanks.